everyone, and welcome to CFP Today. As always, brought to you by our friends over at Fox 40. Go give them your love on behalf of us because they support us here with all things Canadian football perspective. Today, I'm going to begin with two things. One, I'm going to put on my potential commissioner's hat.
Ooh.
For
Are
anybody
you on the Mike
watching,
Mariali train for
I would love for the CEBL's leading man to potentially be running the Canadian Football League. I've seen you posting a couple of things about that, and I am in as a. I also love the idea of the guy who used to do color commentary with me on AM radio becoming
Mm.
the commissioner of the Canadian Football League. But we'll see where that one goes. I know you'll be posting about that. And the second thing is I'm going to bring in my chief propagandist, Braden Stachel. Who you all know as one of the more enjoyable, delightful, open-minded, fun-thinking characters that exists on social media because we're here to talk about social media and a very specific new platform that's popped up that's kind of caught my interest and got my brain churning as the way that Braden's mind is always churning when it comes to all of these things that deal with digital properties and everything else. Is that a fair intro, Braden?
That's a completely fair intro.
There
Yeah.
you go. So a CFL Reddit is where everybody would know Braden from. So that is the background on that. We also went to high school together. For
Yes,
the
we did.
so any propaganda that you see that comes out, it's just a Falcon thing. You wouldn't get it. But I wanted to bring you on to talk about Blue Sky, and the reason for this is like obviously this is not going to be, a huge 4-hour sit down conference think tank on what is Blue Sky and what does it mean and all the rest. I just wanted to get your thoughts on what it means for the Canadian Football League because obviously it's been around for a while. And I remember when it was kind of like, oh, you have to be invited. It was like,
Hmm.
and it's also a place to avoid some of the missteppings that we're seeing over on Twitter and X and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, it's different and it attracts a different type of person. And we'll get into all of that. But specifically, when I just randomly the other day hopped on because I was like, I don't know,
Hmm.
I'm kind of curious. I want to see what this is about. And I actually listened to I think it's a Meadowlark Media podcast. It was Mina Kimes alongside Pablo Torre and Dan Lebitard, and they were talking about basically why people are going to this app, like why Blue
Hmm.
Sky is a thing. So I hopped on it after I listened to that podcast because I was like, it interests me. And as soon as I got there, I started searching for people to follow, and you could tell from the tweet that I sent out, which was, "Hey, where the Blue Sky is, everybody." I was like, because I thought I was late to the party in this
Hmm.
one, and I get there and it's like CFL wasn't there at all. I tweet that out. 24 hours later, it looks like the official CFL account hops on there, and all of a sudden I'm getting followed by a ton more people than I did in the first 24 hours. It feels like we're in the middle of a CFL migration to this place.
Hmm.
First question is, do you agree with that? Does it feel like there's momentum building in it, or is this just like one of those weird, hey, there's another new app and it'll fade in 2 weeks? And the second part of that is, what does Blue Sky offer to the CFL fans? Because it feels like the CFL community at large wants to find a place to peacefully, for the most part,
Hmm.
discuss our interests, similarities, differences, allegiances, rivalries, and Twitter increasingly has just become a place that you can't really have a civil discussion about anything.
Hmm. So, okay, we're gonna pull things out because I
Yep.
kind of have to explain some things come from like a broader perspective. So, like my background was a social media strategist. Before I do what I do now. I worked for a company out in Montreal where like my entire job was understanding these platforms and figuring out strategies for influencers to monetize and exploit these platforms. So with Blue Sky, like we're talking about the exodus that we're seeing right now. There's only one instance in history where there's been a social media exodus that's actually stuck, and it's the one that I'm super, super familiar with. It's Reddit. So there used to be a platform called Dig, and Dig did a bunch of things. They made some changes, which was effective. There was some things to push back against piracy, which you can kind of agree with. But one of the big ones was Dig became pay to play. So think of a Reddit homepage. You can basically pay to be on that front page. And everyone was like, screw this. We're moving to Reddit.
Right.
And that was the first, and I would argue probably the last real migration. there's been migrations that have tried to happen. Be Real's one that I think pops up. Threads was a pseudo migration, I guess you could call it, because nobody really migrated from anywhere. You just used your Instagram account, you signed up, and now it's kind of dead in the water. What we're seeing with Blue Sky is very, very reactionary towards obviously everything that you said is going on Twitter. Is it going to be an exodus, though? I don't know. And the reason why I don't know that, it has all the makings of an exodus. It has all the pieces that you need to create an exodus. And it has all the pieces that, like you see with what happened with Dig and Reddit. But the issue is, from kind of a macro level, what's happening is social media is splintering. So you have platforms that are more dedicated to this specific demographic. You have platforms that are more specific to this demographic. You and I are millennials. Like, Instagrams are tried and true. Like, we live there. The boomers are on Facebook. I personally see what I think is going to happen between the Twitter and the Blue Sky is what we're going to see is a split down political lines. Unfortunately, I hate getting politics involved in social
No,
media,
th
but
this was going to be this was going to be one of
it
my follow-up questions is
yeah,
about like the political divide because it feels like Blue Sky is being looked at as essentially just a safe place for a bunch of liberals to go and be of like
right,
not have to deal with any crazy right-wing stuff that's happening, whether it's in the States or in Canada. And it's like,
right.
but does it need to be political, or can we just try to keep a space free of disinformation and everything that's come with Twitter?
Exactly. And so in that kind of it presents the problem that social media in general has right now. So, like, not 2 years ago, every social media platform was trying to be everything. Instagram was trying to be a text-based, video-based, photo-based, everything. Facebook, Twitter tried to be video for a while. Everybody was trying to be everything, and consumers collectively completely rejected that. The big piece to all of this is the concept of community. And I challenge you, go back and read YouTube's 2024 trends report, Instagram's trend report. All of them are based off community. Okay. So for me, the platform that is going to win is going to be the platform, regardless of political lines, is going to be the platform that builds the community and gives people a space to articulate in a way that is appropriate for that brand. So 1v1, because CFL fans and Canadian football fans come from all political stripes and all colors and creeds and all everything. I don't know if the concept of an exodus and CFL fandom completely moving to Blue Sky is realistic, because you are going to get some people, let's just say Twitter X is right wing, Blue Sky's liberal. You are going to get some CFL fans, valid CFL fans, who are going to be hardcore on the right, and they're still going to need their needs for CFL served on the platform that they occupy. The same with liberal people in Blue Sky. So, is it an exodus? I don't know. Is it a fracturing? Yes. Because even my interaction on Blue Sky, it's a lot more peaceful. It's not as fast, and that just might be because the numbers aren't there, but it's a lot more peaceful and it's a lot more enjoyable. And for me personally, it's where I would like to be, because I've seen enough things just on my Twitter feed on a day-to-day basis that have made me want to put bleach in my eyes. And I've never seen that on Blue Sky. The issue with that is Blue Sky has to find a way to be at least revenue neutral to find a path to sustainability. Because right now they're trying to run a platform off a model from 2015 that was never profitable. Like, Twitter was never profitable outside of a few quarters, and they're basically trying to copy a model that was never profitable. So how do you convince users of long-term stability if the model that you are following has completely failed and evolved into what Twitter is now?
Yeah. So
Um,
couple of thoughts on this for me. One is that
yeah.
when I got there and I maybe the BC Lions were on when I signed up. I don't I,
Okay.
yeah, so
I think the Ticats are.
okay,
I
the
keep
Ticats are
seeing
now.
something floating. Yeah.
I got tagged in something on one of the first days on where it's like I think Hamilton just
Yeah.
joined, and I said, well, if the league just did, then they probably sent a note out to the social media managers for the teams and said, hey, we should like
Yeah.
let's coordinate, let's get on there kind of thing. But my first thought was because you mentioned the political stuff, I wondered whether or not when I got on, the teams weren't on there because it was my first thought of
Hmm.
of what to follow. I'm like, I'll just go follow all of the nine teams in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
league.
yeah.
And I'm like, they're not here. And once I realized that, the thought went through my head of, are they scared to join this because it feels like a political like a political
Statement.
proclamation of like we're joining
Yeah.
Blue Sky because we're not happy with what happened in the presidential election. We don't stand for the values of
Hmm.
whatever like that message that people perceive, because let's be real,
Hmm.
messages are perceived, they're not innate.
Yeah.
So when I saw that no teams were on there, I was like, are they scared to join because they don't want to infuriate a part of their fan
Fan
base
base.
because they
Yeah.
join something that their fan base perceives to be a message about where they align?
I think there's definitely those fears out there. And for a lot of like anybody running a marketing department right now, there's one person running social media. And the last thing that you want to do, especially because we've had Be Real popped in and out of existence. A lot of alternative apps have popped up, and it's like, okay, it's something else I have to add to the roster. It's something else I have to figure out a content strategy for. It's
Yep.
something else I'm going to have to understand what the community vibe is and how to engage appropriately. So I feel like for a lot of SMMs right now, it's very much just like, okay, if this platform has lags, then we're going to get there. And I think too, there's probably a communication strategy for exactly what you just explained, where it's like, hey, we're not trying to, there's definitely a better way to say this, but hey, we're not trying to make a political statement. We're just trying to cover all our bases to make sure that we can reach you, the
Right.
fans.
And the
But yeah,
interesting dynamic on that one for me becomes, so the teams don't want to jump out and get on there proactively until they know this thing has legs. But if the teams are on
mhm,
social media, CFL fans are significantly more likely to want to join that space.
exactly. Exactly. It's kind of like a chicken and an egg situation. Like the fans want to be there, or if the teams are there and the teams aren't going to be there unless the fans are there and it's stable. But I think the way it's growing, I think it did another million. Is it monthly active users or DAUs? Let's just say it's monthly active users, but 23 monthly active users who are very vocally talking about the platform positively, for me, in my experience, is something that would make me, if I was in the role of a CFL social media manager, at least start trying to figure out the platform. Like you don't have to actively be involved. Obviously, we're in the off season, so there's time to kind of sit back and watch how this unfolds and see what the proper way to engage is. But I would take this time and just try and figure out the best approach because, again, all the factors that you've already said and just developing on a new platform is a headache in itself.
Yeah.
Like, if you've ever taken somebody who's like really, really great at TikTok and then be like, okay, what's my LinkedIn strategy? You're just going to see them be like, I don't know. Thank HR for me being born. Like,
That's literally me on TikTok. I'm like, I really got to learn this. This is where the kids are. So I've heard, and I'm like, this whole video editing thing seems really stressful on this app. So it was like,
yeah.
uh, but
But
yeah.
even in terms of the content strategy too, I was having a good conversation with Nelson. Have you talked to Nelson Hakowicz? I'm
No, I
saying his
don't. I
name
don't
wrong.
think in person, but yeah.
But he's like where my marketing brain is very like we should put the Eiffel Tower on the moon. He's like, well, let's consider the logistical costs of this. So him and I have like a lot of like really great conversations regarding Marcoms for the CFL. Um, I had a point to this, and now I just completely forget my point.
I probably just cut you off. It's fine.
No, no, it's dad brain. Geez, I had a point. I was building up to a really great point. Um, um,
That's okay. It's all good. I'll
yeah.
we'll
It's gonna pop in at the very end, and I'm gonna remember it. But
that's
it
okay.
was a good point. Just yeah,
You
put an
you
annotation. He had a good point.
you need to just send out a video from CFL Reddit on for now for X and Twitter. Once you remember what it was, be like, hey, here's the post game show to whatever that thought was I was trying to do. The only other thing I want to ask you before we get out of here is for
Mhm.
people like Farhan, for Dave, for like
Mm.
CFL personalities, for star players, like all of that kind of stuff. I think the biggest challenge and the thing I'm most interested to watch, and I'd love to do a follow-up podcast on this with you in
Mhm.
like a couple of months here as
Definitely,
we go through the off season and see what's
definitely.
actually happened. But the biggest question, I guess, and challenge is, for me, I've got couple thousand followers on Twitter. That's something that has been built
Hmm.
over time from people that are interested in whatever I'm doing with the football stuff. And uh,
Hmm.
it's that's the attachment is like, I don't really
Hmm.
want to leave this because if I send out, right now in the early stages of Blue Sky, if you want to call it, I guess it is, we could call it
Yeah.
that. If I want to send out, the exact same message, the exact
Hmm.
same media, a chart of why the hell Bo Levi Mitchell should have won the MOP even though he didn't, kind of thing. It's like if
Hmm.
I send that all in those two, obviously there's going to be a lot more engagement on Twitter because there's more followers and there's more this and there's more,
Hmm.
and like you say, it's just slower on Blue Sky. But the interesting thing for me is, okay, so if that's Milt Stegall, if that's Davis Sanchez, whatever, it's like you want to stay on Twitter because it's got a lot of the people that you know and that you have the conversations with.
Hmm.
However, is there a higher ceiling, to use kind of like a football scouting term, on Blue Sky for what it could become? Or, and this is what I'm really interested in,
Hmm.
are we just nostalgic for the start of Twitter? Because the start of Twitter was friggin' fun and amazing and simple and enjoyable, and it's the reason I actually fell in love with social media. And so I'm
Hmm.
like, I kind of have this deja vu feeling of like, oh, I'm going somewhere where it seems lighthearted, and when I see funny memes, they're not politically motivated, and I'm just here to enjoy myself. And it's like, I wonder whether or not I have been intrigued by this Blue Sky project and what it could be moving forward because it legitimately, like you say, has legs, or if I'm just enjoying the nostalgia of this is what Twitter used to feel like. And maybe by the time, like any small town, once everybody moves in and we have to build a bunch of condos on Blue Sky, maybe we're like, shit, this is just the GTA again. We just built another GTA.
So what you're talking about is it's a real phenomenon. It's in shitification.
Yeah.
It's a real term for it, right? But I think like what you're describing is kind of like we've turned these channels, these social media channels, into these like very sterile, very corporatized, very like you're basically reading a PR feed, a news line, right? Just okay, here's this link out to an article, da da da.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have a funny meme that's in context, da da da. The beauty of early Twitter was for the first time, normal people were interacting with like celebrities or brands in a way where they got like that instant feedback. And they were like, I remember my first time on Twitter, I was like, oh, I'm learning Ashton Kutcher likes friggin' bagels on Tuesdays, right? I was learning all these things. And I think to recapture that feeling, because I think you're very right. Everyone is trying to recapture that feeling. To recapture that feeling on Blue Sky, I think people like you, people like Dave Naylor, Farhan, you guys have, and I experienced this at the U Sports banquet when I had like three people come up and like, hey, want to see this photo of the Grey Cup that's never been shown in public before with all these like da da da. You guys have this intimate knowledge, but you work in a sphere that is, for lack of a better term, very sterile because of the way you guys present yourself behind TSN has to be professional. Obviously, you're representing that brand. But there is an opportunity on Blue Sky to recreate all that by being less sterile, by bringing those like intimate knowledge pieces that only you guys have because you've been behind the scenes for so long over to Blue Sky to reignite that feeling. I think if you guys started all doing that, like Marsh, I'm sure you have fantastic stories from like your Vanier run or the Vanier run with Kyle Quinlan or behind the scenes at TSN that aren't going to make it on these sterile channels that people would crave to know.
Yeah.
So I think you are definitely right. People are looking for that nostalgia. They're looking for that emotion, but there is an opportunity for people like yourself to recreate that. If you just approach it in a way where it's like, this isn't corporate yet. It's gonna be. We all know it's gonna be if it catches legs. But here's somewhere where you can find information that's you're not going to find on these other platforms. That's going to be more interesting. That's going to keep you engaged. That's actually going to add to your knowledge and your fandom. And it could become a talking point. If you have a photo of, I don't know, Pinball sitting inside of the Grey Cup. I haven't met Pinball in person, so I'm just guessing his proportions. Um,
Disrespectful, honey.
I love Pinball. I'll give him a hug whenever I meet him. I have a card signed from 1991 as well. But things like that to recapture that feeling like it's really in the hands of the creators who are on the platform now to either find a new way to invoke nostalgia long term or to find a way to bring back that Twitter nostalgia to bring the people who experienced that back in 2010, 2011, and keep them there. But yeah,
But
who knows?
yeah, it's so funny because I honestly, when you mentioned 2010, 2011, like I think I got on Twitter in 2009.
Hmm.
I went to McMaster in 2010.
Hmm.
And I started doing media work when I was in like my third year. I was on campus, CFMU
Because you're
93.
on Mac Radio, weren't you?
Right. So it was like student
Yeah.
radio, and that was kind of how I built my profile because early days Twitter fit my personality so well
Hmm.
that I could go on there and have fun. And it never felt like I was pissing someone off or I was just looking
Hmm.
for a fight. I've essentially stopped using Twitter in the last year and a bit. Still send out the
Hmm.
odd thing here and there, but I spend so much less time on it because it's ceased to be enjoyable. And whether
Fair.
it's mental health or otherwise, I'm like, I just want to enjoy
Hmm.
life, right? So
Hmm.
I basically have shied away from it. Now this thing has opened a different door where I'm curious to see whether or not it becomes a platform where, as you say, people can actually be themselves
Hmm.
and enjoy and feel safe being themselves, or does it start to transition, and how long will that take? But I'm not at TSN if Twitter doesn't get launched in 2009. I firmly believe that because
Hmm.
nobody would know who I was if I was just working student
Hmm.
radio and not, stalking the Tiger Cats when they're at McMaster and going and filming in
Yeah.
places that I shouldn't have been. I probably wouldn't be having the job that I do, the career that I do, which is crazy that social media can create careers, but it's true.
Same thing happened for me. Like
Yeah.
the doors that the CFL Reddit account have opened for me have been insane. And obviously there's a little bit leverage on my part because I run a community that does millions upon millions of hits every year, hundreds of thousands of people every year. So I have leverage, but exactly what you said, like early Twitter was a gateway for people like us to get into media, get behind the scenes, and do something that we actually love. And you have a career because of it. I have a career because of it now. And it's something that I can see a desperate attempt for people to try and replicate. But the way you were talking about Blue Sky, something popped into my head that has me wondering now, and I might have to do some other consultations with people. I wonder if Blue Sky is almost a millennial nostalgia play. I wonder if it's that perfect pocket for people like you and I who came on to social media, like really, like actually started really engaging in social media.
Awesome stuff from Braden there. Appreciate his perspective on everything going on with social media, the trends, the challenges. Yeah, it's certainly something I never thought I would have any interest in because, as a general philosophy, not on Facebook. I use Instagram to post pictures of my dog, motorcycles, and kid. Uh, Twitter used to be the place that I would go to for hardcore football, to reach out to as many people as possible. Feels generally unenjoyable, as I said, at this point. So who knows what Blue Sky is going to become? Who knows if it can actually latch on and what type of a crowd it will facilitate? But I think we're going to find out basically by the time that the 2025 CFL season kicks off, and it's essentially got a winter and a spring to see which direction it takes, not even for the Yap at large, but if it creates one of those kind of micro communities in and around the Canadian Football League where maybe it becomes a hub where it feels like you're home more than Twitter does. I don't know. I'm very curious to see what happens with it there. But Braden was awesome. And as always, thank you so much to our good friends over at Fox 40 for supporting everything we do here on CFP and CFP Today. Canadian Football Perspective. Officially, it's the end of the Canadian football season. Even offices going on right now here in Ontario, but you've got CFL done, U Sports done for the season. I don't think we're going to shut her down for the winter, though, folks. We're going to keep hanging out, doing some podcasts. Anytime anything interesting pops up, there's always things to chew on in the CFL offseason, and this year is certainly no different. So follow along, make sure you subscribe, and looking forward to chatting to you again next time on CFP Today. Thanks for listening.